Well, good evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans, and welcome to the summer heat wave that is the 2014 WNBA postseason push. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into WNBA 365 Playoff Central. Joining me tonight, for right now, we will be joined by Crystal Mancy sometime soon. For the meantime, we are joined by Crystal Thomas, our esteemed correspondent from Los Angeles, California. Crystal, good evening. How's it going tonight?
I am good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Glad we can get you on here again. We were talking about Wu-Tang Clan a few minutes ago, according to what we have seen on Twitter a little bit. But in any fashion, though, we again are grateful to have you here again, and we're gonna try to bring you and Shorty on as much as we can during the postseason to get your guys' take. Crystal, real quick before we get to everything about the postseason and stuff, I wanted to kind of get your take real quickly about the Sparks regular season, because I know that you watched both of our shows, or all of our shows, yesterday at the point in time where we had sort of talked about it, sort of recap the Sparks regular season, which we know was a very turbulent slash roller coaster ride of emotion, basically, for the 2014 season, with so much uncertainty over the off season, and then a season I think that a lot of fans want to forget, but it is the 14th time that the Sparks go to the postseason. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts real quick, though, about the Sparks 2014 season through your eyes for this year.
Uh, Up and down is what I would say. Up and down, turbulent. I'm trying to find all these big words I can pull off the dictionary right now. Um, Pretty much very troublesome. It started off great, then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, a dry patch kind of just hit, and then there was a point where we had no idea whether or not the Sparks would even make it to the playoffs, let alone be placed in a high position. Everybody was thinking lottery pick for LA, but some kind of way they turned it around. I don't know how. Something happened, though. I think you give Penny a lot of credit, too. Everybody started responding to Penny a lot more. You give the players a lot of credit because, they're the ones out there playing. But I don't know. I would say a very confusing season, to say the least.
I think in a fashion, I think that this year is going to be remembered probably as one of the, probably one of the, probably one of the, maybe one of the worst, perhaps, regular seasons in team history. It's not like the 10-24 season of '07 or the early years from '97 to '99, how the team was bad. But it was just, there was a lot, turbulence is a good word to say, Crystal, so thanks for using that one earlier on. But it was, peaks and valleys, ups and downs, more so downs. And I think the turning point of the year, I think, kind of goes back to that 4-game losing streak back in June where, yes, you got whitewashed twice in a row by Minnesota, both times at home. Then you went on the road and lost to Tulsa basically at the buzzer, and then got whitewashed by the Stars in San Antonio. And then we had the Candace Parker versus Gail Gustenkor's brawl breakout, where Parker was basically basically all in Gail's face during a timeout in the first quarter. And then I think that may have been the message to Magic Johnson and Penny Toller, like, we've got to make a move here because this isn't going well. This is sort of like the Titanic here. We're sinking, tanking water very quickly here. And that is everything and that is basically, I think, the entire season in a nutshell. And Crystal, just to kind of throw it out there again, the Sparks being lottery bound. I think it might be for the Sparks to be lottery bound, you've got to have a season like 2007 or 2010 probably, when Parker was out, or the year before you got Parker perhaps, because anything else is basically unacceptable by this franchise's fan base. And to the point that there was talk, that LA could have been a lottery team is, beyond my mind right now.
It happens. The best teams sometimes have horrible seasons, and this was a brink to being a horrible season. Luckily, it got saved. I'm not even really sure who you could credit the save to. I guess everybody in their own way. I will admit, though, the players respond well to Penny Toller. I don't know what it is. I guess it's because they realize she's the GM and anything can happen at any given moment. Maybe it's probably like, I like to call it a tryout phase again. Maybe it's a situation where players are pretty much in a tryout situation where if they don't do well right now, then it's over for them. And that's kind of how I think it is. It's kind of like they're probably using it as a huge, big, long tryout. And they realize at any moment Penny can, cut them off from the team.
I completely agree, Crystal. I mean, initially, again, because I was at Penny's first home game she coached against the Liberty back in July. And if anyone has been to my sports broadcasting website, which is callamac.wix.com/CallamacSports, and you read my first blog at least, where I kind of went in detail a bit about my thoughts on the coaching change, was, Crystal, initially I, couldn't get it around my head that you would promote Penny Toller, who we know is a cornerstone of the WNBA as a league, as a pioneer, the first points in league history back, on June 21st of '97 at the Forum against New York. But again, 3-year player, longest tenured GM, who has never coached a game in her career, I thought, was basically like, this is going to be like, the Lakers 2014 season all over again, where it was basically just go out there and kind of hope and pray for the best, basically. But since then, though, the team has, I think, and as you said earlier, they did respond in some fashion to that change because they know that Penny has the power of the GM tag to get them off the roster, either release or trade somehow. But also at the same time, though, Crystal, I think it's a catch-22 here because Penny also realizes that she could also be out my studio door pretty soon, perhaps, if Magic Johnson does not get his coveted championship trophy after the season, because I wrote, and I still completely feel, that Penny Toller is coaching and working for her other job titles this season. What do you think about that, though? Is that kind of in the back of your mind that Penny also could be out of here, too, along with some players, perhaps, if Magic does not get his long-lost championship this season in his first year as a new owner of a team?
I wouldn't be surprised if Penny actually was working for her job, coaching for her job. I feel like she's not. She possibly could be, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did get fired. But I feel like Magic likes her, so he's gonna keep her. The only thing is, I want to know who they're gonna get for next year, because Penny can't be a coach forever, and she's not doing a bad job right now. She like I said, they're responding. I think it has a lot to do with that Penny's the GM and whatever she kind of says goes mentality. But I wouldn't be surprised at this rate. I mean, hey, Coach Ross got fired, so at this rate, it's not a surprise if anything anymore.
Crystal, even looking back over what I just wrote, earlier this month from my hotel in Hawaii when I was over on vacation, is I still, to this day, and even back when I was solo here back on July 7th, is I still can't think of anybody out there that would come in here to coach this LA club right now, or even over the offseason, because I figured that if the season went down the tubes in the drain, like it would end on, like, for instance, if it ends on Sunday at Staples Center, again in the first round by another 1-point loss to Phoenix, again for like the third straight year they've lost in the postseason by a measly point, something would have to change. But I did not see it coming mid-season. And now, at this point in time, I still really cannot name anybody that I can see coming in to coach this team next year. I mean, I don't know what candidates are out there. And I've kind of talked with Chris a little bit about, would any Showtime Lakers, knowing that Magic has those connections with his teammates, would they come in to coach? Now, of course, I would have said Cooper, of course, but Coop's overdoing his thing with Atlanta. And at the same time, do we even want to try to even get? Do we even try to bring back Sandy or Bridget from Tulsa, or by gosh, try and get Jen Gillum back from Connecticut? Who knows who's out there, Crystal? But in my view, again, I just did not see the coaching change come mid-season. I thought if anything did happen, it would have to come during the offseason when they could, really sit down and kind of figure this out for next year. But mid-season, I think, was a long shot. But again, Penny has done her job, and again, I even said last night too, Crystal, that the Sparks could probably be destined for a run in the postseason like the Fever did 2 years ago. They had a very, very shaky regular season. And look what they did. They got all the way to the finals and beat the Lynx in the 2012 finals. So it could happen. You never know. Unfortunately, being realistic, Crystal, I do not see it happening, unfortunately, because I just think that the Sparks I think this point in time are kind of, riding out the ship and trying to get to the offseason so they can kind of reestablish some goals here. But again, anything's possible. But before we get to the playoff previews here, Crystal, how far do you think though this LA club does get, and could they possibly pull off that run like the Fever did 2 years ago to bring the championship back to Hollywood?
Realistically, if we're lucky, we'll get out the first round. I'm not banking this year on the championship. I mean, I love my team. I'm positive. I have faith. I have enough faith that we'll get out the first round. But realistically, I don't know if we'll go that far. It's not impossible, like you said. Indiana did it, which was a great series. I'm glad they pulled it away. So it's not impossible, but I don't know. You know, the way that LA has played this year, there's been a lot of inconsistent play. You know, one quarter they'll be up, next quarter they'll be down. One game they'll be horrible, next game they'll be great. So it's you know, you can't really play like that and hope to win a championship. So realistically, I say if possible, the second round.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone is kind of banking on another first-round exit, maybe second round, or in Chris's case, he's saying we're going all the way to beat Atlanta for the WNBA title. But Crystal, before we do get to the postseason, I did say last night that I have that team in purple and orange down there in the desert winning the title. Who is your early favorite right now to win the 2014 WNBA title right now? You've got Phoenix, who's red hot. The Lynx are right there. LA, San Antonio in the west, and out east you got Atlanta, Chicago, Indy, and Washington. But I said Phoenix. Who is your early favorite right now to win the 2014 title?
If not my Sparks, you know, which I'm not sure about. It's a toss-up between either Phoenix or Minnesota again. I hope it's not Minnesota again. I wouldn't mind if it was Phoenix, because they're playing phenomenal basketball. Like they're playing great. For the East, I don't know. I feel like anybody in the East can make it out. It's a toss-up. Who knows? Even though this is a long shot, maybe Washington will come out and surprise us. Who knows? You know, the East is just, it's so close in competition in the East. But for the West, it's either going to be Phoenix or Minnesota.
Yeah, I think it'll be either the Lynx or the Mercury for the Western Conference representative. And then East, I completely agree that, you know, any of those four teams are worthy of the title. With that, we started this year, folks, back on May 16th with 12 WNBA teams all vying for the coveted WNBA title. As the season went on, as we got to the last day of the regular season, we had 12. We're down to the Elite Eight for the WNBA championship. 4 teams from each conference looking for their long-lost WNBA titles. Could the title be going to Hollywood, the desert, back to Minnesota, down to the Lone Star State, Hotlanta, Chi-Town, Indianapolis, or will President Obama be hosting his Washington Mystics at the White House this year? We will find out when the time comes. But with that, we'll get to the playoff push central viewing page here, and we will preview the matchups across the WNBA postseason. Crystal, we will begin out east with the number 1 seed Atlanta Dream facing the number 4 seed Chicago Sky. Regular season series. Chicago won that series 3-2 over Atlanta. Crystal, we'll start with the Dream, who again are looking to once again represent the Eastern Conference in the 2014 WNBA Finals, where they have gotten there in the past few years, Crystal, but something just seems to click off for this Atlanta team where they can't get the job done in the postseason. They have succumbed to the Lynx again. They did it again last year in the postseason. Crystal, in your mind, what do you think has sort of been Atlanta's problem going forward, getting past those first 2 rounds, but falling, though, when it counts the most, that's in the WNBA Final Series?
I don't know. I'd probably have to say they probably don't have the right bench for it. And I don't think people realize having the right bench for a team is important as having a great starting 5. So I think I'll have to say I don't think they have the proper bench for it. Because LA was like that. But like last year, what was that year? I think I'm gonna say 2012, when some kind of way they made it all the way to the second round and lost. So I mean, I think having a bench is as important. So I would say the bench is probably the dark horse for Atlanta.
I was going to say playoff inexperience, but I need to take that back because Atlanta's been at the cusp of the championship trophy every year so far in the past 2 to 3 years and haven't done so. I just think that they have probably. I think perhaps the fatigue factor has probably kicked in at the wrong time. I think perhaps because it just looks like every year, last year and in 2012, I want to say, or at least 2013, or at least more so last year, that team just looks so depleted and tired in the final series where they just got whitewashed in a few of those games by the Lynx last season. I think their big problem is just, perhaps the fatigue factor might be one, but I think Michael Cooper's got them geared back in the right way. Then looking at their opponent, the 4 seed Chicago Sky, Crystal, who have had a sort of a small representation of a LA season. They started red hot, and then without Elena Del Don for a few games because of her Lyme disease, they went down south for a few weeks and days and months, and they barely held on for the 4 seed. Crystal, I did not realize that in basketball if you could take one big puzzle piece like EDD out of the lineup, the team would just lose like what seemed like 5 straight games in that. And I think coming off last year, I mean there was so much hype and anticipation in Chicago after they got EDD and they had that phenomenal year last year where now they sort of become an average team again. In your view, kind of looking at the Sky season, where do you kind of put it's like where you kind of like put your finger and say that's where the Sky season went down south? And I think we all can agree perhaps it was when they did lose Elena Del Don because of her Lyme disease.
Yeah, that was a big blow. Then at one point they lost EDD. Then they didn't have Sylvia Fowles. And then Sylvia Fowles came back, but she, coming back from injury, it takes a little bit to get back to the hang of the game. But that's the thing about basketball. It's a team sport, but one person can change the game. And EDD proved that. I mean, think about it. Chicago didn't have EDD pretty much up until last year. Before they had her, they pretty much seemed like the same team. They were in the mix, but then they would just lose. And you see how important that draft pick was for Chicago. And if people didn't think EDD was as important to that franchise, then from the games that they lost, they saw, up until I think it was like they went on 16-game losing streak or something like that. And she came back, and some kind of way, through the luck of the basketball guys, they put it back together, and now they're in the playoffs. So, I mean, that just lets you know anything can happen.
I think Chicago's future remains bright with Elena Del Don and also with Jamira Faulkner, who's also going to be a shining star. And also, I mean, even the knockdown comeback story of Jessica Breland, who also got back in the league this year. She's had a good season as well. Crystal, I have Atlanta winning this, but in your view, who wins this series and why? The Dream or is it the Sky?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one because I could see Atlanta winning it, but at the same time, Chicago is a strong team that rallies back. We've seen Chicago rally back from a whole bunch of big games. So it depends. I think that's a series that you'd have to watch closely. It's not going to be a sweep, though. I can tell you that for sure. I don't know who's going to win, but it's definitely not going to be a sweep. It's going to go 3 games.
Yeah, I completely agree. I said it goes 3. It goes 3 all the way around. Then in the other Eastern Conference matchup, we have the 2-seed Indiana Fever rallying back from a rough season, taking on the 3-seed Washington Mystics. Both teams split the 4-game series in the regular season, and both teams finished with identical records of 16 and 18. Crystal, the Fever have a lot to play for this year. This is the final year that they will have head coach Lynn Dunn on the sidelines after what's been a great 42-year career of coaching women's basketball in her tenure. And, of course, they got their aged/seasoned veteran, Tamika Catchings, back after 17 games because of back spasms. Crystal, I think there's that extra drive/extra initiative for the Fever to do well this year because they know this is the last year that they'll have Coach Dunn on the sidelines. And I think they got hot at the right time. And, plus, they also got their star player back in Tamika Catchings back at the right time. Your thoughts on the Indiana season this year, seeing that they have the same record as the Sparks? Could they possibly kind of repeat what happened 2 years ago, perhaps, this season? What do you think?
Anything is possible, and I like Indiana. I like Tamika Catchings. She's been one of my favorite players for a long time. I think I think that's one of the motives Lynn Dunn's retiring, and they want to go out on top for their coach. I mean, she's a great coach too, one of the best that the league has ever had, and I think she deserves it. I feel like, it's not going to be easy for them. I would love to see Indiana win it, but I mean, I also like Mo Curry too, so I would be happy with any one of those teams winning. Everybody knows my love for Mo Curry for some reason. I don't even know what it is, but I don't know. That's going to be fun to watch. That's going to be really fun to watch.
I think Indiana. I mean, they're a great team. I like watching too, and I've been a big fan of Catch since she was a part of the team that went undefeated at Tennessee back in the early '90s when she was still there with Shamika Holzclaw and a few other players over there. Again, I think they have that extra drive this postseason. Again, knowing that Lynn Dunn is going to be stepping down after this year, and kind of going back and taking finishing her great coaching career this year, and everything else included. And then Crystal, you go to the Mystics this year, who I think are going to have a bright future because of their draft this year, and they still have some veterans on their team like your girl Mo Curry and my girl Ivory Lotz. Then you got the two then you got the two hot shots from UConn and Stephanie Dolson, whose hair color changes like every other day of the week it seems like, and then Bria Hartley. The Mystics have been a team that are going to give you problems, and they do have Mike Tebow, the last year's Coach of the Year, on their side, who also has the record for most wins as a head coach in the WNBA, or at least the present-day WNBA. I mean, Washington, I think, is going to be in the mix for the next few years, and they're going to be a team that's going to pester you for a while. And they have a lot of great players on their team, from Ivory and Mo Curry, and then to the young kids in Hartley and Dolson. And of course, we can't forget Kia Vaughn when she plays, and also with Kara Loss when she's also there, not working with ESPN. Crystal, your thoughts about the Mystics? Again, a bit of a down year again, but hey, they got back in the postseason. And here last year, I mean, they took the Dream to 3 games last season before they lost in Game 3. What do you think about the Mystics perhaps having a chance here in the 2014 postseason?
I think they have a really, 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 really high chance. And first of all, they got a coach who's capable, which is why I don't understand why Connecticut would fire Mike Tebow in the first place. But they have a coach that's really capable. And on top of that, you got Mo Curry. I mean, come on. Mo Curry, I'm telling you, Mo Curry is just like the LeBron James of the Mystics right now. But no, they have a bright future. They're a pretty young team. They get younger every year is what it seems like. They have all the right pieces. I mean, I don't even know technically if they're missing anything. They might be, but I was a little bit surprised about the Crystal Langhorne trade earlier this year. I feel like that could have helped them out a little bit. I think the Crystal Langhorne trade surprised a lot of people. I wasn't really expecting that one, but I mean, I guess it worked out for the best because they made the playoffs. So they have a really high chance. They have a high chance. That's a team that I think is a sleeper team. I wouldn't be surprised if that team made it to the second round.
Yeah, I think Washington is capable, perhaps, of getting there, but I said Indiana, Chris, because I think the Fever have the playoff experience, where I think the Mystics, a little bit in a fashion, are playoff inexperienced. I think in a small fashion. I mean, I don't think they're a bad team or whatever. It's just I don't think that they're really geared for the postseason or getting through the postseason at least. But I really, though, I think with the Fever again having that extra initiative again, and with Coach Dunn and Catch coming back at the same time. But I think with the Fever again for the 10th straight year being in the WNBA postseason again, and I think that they just have they had the veteran in Catchings, and of course their team has been in the postseason for 10 straight years. I think Indiana wins. It might be a 3-game series again. But Crystal, what do you think though? You got Indy or you got the Mystics in either 2 or 3? Who is it?
I gotta pick. I have to pick. That's a hard one. Indy or Washington? That's a hard one. Could I stay neutral? Could I just say I'm happy for whoever?
You can say neutral. Yeah, don't worry about it.
That's a hard one. Both those teams, I can see anyone getting out, and both of those teams have so much potential to get out. It's hard to pick one. And like I said, I like both Tamika Catchings and Bria January, Mo Curry, Bria Hart. I like them all. So it's kind of hard to just.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough in my case with this next matchup as we shift out west here to begin the Western Conference one again, which is the number 1 seed Phoenix Mercury, who set the new record and set the bar now for the most wins in a WNBA season at 29 wins and 5 losses. They will take on the number 4 seed Los Angeles Sparks, who again had a very turbulent 2014 campaign as they finished in 4th place at 16-18. The Mercury owned LA in the regular season, winning all 5 matchups, a few of those by more than 20-point margins. Crystal, nothing better than having the 2 most iconic WNBA franchises whose names are all across WNBA record books, all across, with all the records and the championships and the traditions in the tradition of winning and bringing titles back to respective cities. Going to be a fun one, but I just don't know about this one. We'll go to the Mercury first. Crystal, because of a talk of the WNBA, again, a 16-game winning streak, 29 wins on the season, a 8.53 win percentage, and just completely owning everybody, finishing the year with a 16-1 home record. Crystal, I remember you telling me this back on July 24th when we recapped the game against the Mercury at Staples, that Phoenix actually scares you. It actually gives me nightmares thinking about Game 1 on Friday in Phoenix, because this team is just completely reloaded, and I think they are destined. I think their slogan is right, though. I believe that glory is awaiting this Phoenix team because they have, been, in the postseason for so long after winning it in 2009, a couple of down years in 10, 11, and 12, and then, of course, when they got Brittany Griner in the draft in 2013 with the number 1 pick in the lottery. I mean, now it seems like, the time has come for the Mercury to win the WNBA title. Really, Crystal, though, be honest, how scared, though, are you of this Mercury team, though?
I mean, it because it's the playoffs and it's a new season, it makes it a little bit more scary. The Phoenix has just been running through people, and they're doing it with such ease. I think I can't remember what game it was this year, but they have just been beating teams like it was easy. It's kind of like tying their shoes for them. It's just so easy for them, and that's the scary part about it. Everybody plays well, even their bench players play well. Everybody pieces together. You could tell that they're a lot happier than they were last year. The chemistry is great. I mean, chemistry is always great when you're winning, but when when you've won that many games and everyone's on the same page, that's a championship caliber team right there.
I mean, is there like any flaw in this Phoenix Mercury's team's play at all? I don't think there's like one single flaw that should prohibit the Mercury from having a deep postseason run. Now, the only thing I can sort of think of, Crystal, is somehow, some way, if the Sparks can pull a Anaheim Ducks of 2008 and 2009, which would beat the number 1 overall seed in the WNBA or in their league in a series, and for one, I mean, obviously with the Sparks having no luck in the regular season, it's kind of like, what makes you think that they'll win in the postseason anytime soon? And going to the Sparks real quick, I mean, again, a lot of changes over the offseason, new ownership, new broadcast team on television, for heaven's sakes. A lot of things that went down during the offseason for the Sparks. And Crystal, I really don't. I mean, to be fair, I'm not trying to be the Debbie Downer here, as I've been called a few times by a few of the fans for the Sparks. I'm being realistic here, folks, and being objective, neutral, and unbiased here, like I'm supposed to be as a broadcaster. I don't see LA getting past round 1. I think it ends Game 2 in. I see it ending Game 2, whether I'm there or not, at Staples Center, by either 1, 10, or maybe 20 points again, because there's no flaws. There's really, Crystal, there is no stop sign for Phoenix here in the postseason. It's going to be, a bullet train all the way to the WNBA Finals, perhaps. But I mean, as much as I want to see LA pull the upset, I got to be fair. I don't see it happening anytime soon, because Phoenix has basically just garbage trucked everybody in this entire across the league all season. And hey, the best home record too at 16-1, a better away record at 13-4. I don't see it happening anytime soon. So it's kind of like, good luck, ladies. Have good luck, and kind of may the force be with you as well during the series.
I agree with you fully. I mean, like I said, anything can happen because it's a totally new season. But I agree with you fully. If April Sykes is on the team, no, we go all the way to the
Yeah, we might
championship.
have a different story if that was the case, perhaps. Who knows?
Yeah, April Sykes would bring our team all the way to the championship. But unfortunately, April's not on the team. Breaks my heart to say that, folks
He
watching.
almost was during the season.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
move on from there. But I believe Chris and I both picked Phoenix to beat Los Angeles, unfortunately, in that postseason series. But then again, anything is possible. Moving gears to the fourth and final first-round matchup, which will feature the 2 seed. I said it right, folks. The 2 seed Minnesota Lynx at 25-9 against the 16-18 San Antonio Stars. I almost said Silver Stars again for like the 20th time on the network here. Lynx won the regular season series 4-1. Crystal, this is sort of a different Minnesota team from recent championship years, like 2011 and 2013, where they had a few injuries that sort of plagued their season early in the year, which was a bit unfortunate. Again, with Rebecca Brunson having knee problems, Simone Augustus has had bursitis in her knee. The injury bug sort of kind of nipped them in the bud a little bit, but they did rally those for a fourth straight year of 25 or more wins again, Crystal. But again, as we're talking about the Lynx here, Crystal, this really is not the same sort of Lynx team that we kind of know and love and have respected for the past few years.
It's not. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't win the championship this year. They're still a hard team to beat, but it seems like they had a lot more flaws this year to their games. And I think, some of the big blows were Simone Augustus getting injured for a little bit of the game. Rebecca Brunson was out. They just didn't have their core group that they needed to get through it all.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. Welcoming Chris Manson here from the Earnhardt Studios of Anaheim, California. Chris, I should have told you that we're going to be doing the Guys with the Petition after this show if you wanted to kind of hang out here for just a bit, because we already got your take on the postseason last night. But you can hang out here, though. There's nothing wrong with that. We will have a 3-man show for right now. But again, folks, the Guys with the Petition coming up with myself and Chris, following this one to sort of say thanks to a few people and, again, rehash about our off-season programming. But Crystal, you brought up a lot of good, valid points that are all true. Again, this is not the same Lynx team that we have seen over the past years with that star power / firepower / smash your face and blow you out by 20 points every night. Where they did have problems again with the, again with some injury problems again. But injuries happen to everybody again. But I believe, though, Chris, but the only team that is going to save the Lynx in the postseason is they have possibly the 2014 WNBA regular season MVP and perhaps Finals MVP in Maya Moore on their side still, who I believe has had probably one of the better years I've seen in WNBA history, perhaps, in my short time, or at least my 10 years watching the game. I mean, how she started the year with 3 straight 30 or 40-point games. Her all-around game actually all season is going to give her that that MVP trophy. And really, Crystal, in your mind, is there anyone at all that even comes close to sniffing MVP other than Maya Moore right now?
Probably Diana Taurasi, honestly.
Good choice.
I can't even think about any other. I mean, I could be biased and say Candace Parker, but I'm truthful, and I don't think that's going to happen. We're probably between Maya Moore and Candace Parker. I mean, not Candace Parker. I'm sorry, Diana Taurasi. I think those are going to be the ones that are really head-to-head in MVP race.
Yeah, I mean, I think Diana is worthy. Perhaps maybe for on-court demeanor, perhaps, or just her all-around game, perhaps. I mean, frankly, I think it's going to be Maya, regardless of what happens. I mean, the Maya Clinic is going to be open for business, perhaps in the WNBA Finals, perhaps, but I personally do not think there's going to be anyone coming close to winning that MVP award but Maya Moore. And Crystal, as we move on to the final team here in the postseason mix, which is the 16-18 San Antonio Stars, who also have a lot of will have high emotions to play the Lynx in the first round. Again, as we already know, this is the final year that we will see number 25 Becky Hammon play in the silver and black with the Stars. Crystal, again, such a a pioneer, a legend, a cornerstone of the WNBA. Yes, from her days with the Liberty, and then to becoming the face of the Stars franchise down there in San Antonio. I am hoping for the best that the Stars can somehow get through to the next round. Perhaps I don't see it happening though. I think they'll lose to the Lynx in 3 games, perhaps. But I mean, for Becky Hammon, it's going to be a emotional final ride through the postseason. But I think, though, after her retirement, the Stars will still be in good hands between Danielle Robinson. And don't forget, Chris Romanti's least favorite player on that team is Kayla McBride from Notre Dame, how they beat Duke in the first round of the women's tournament this year. I think that their future remains very, very bright, along with D-Rob. And, hey, I mean, you got some good players, too, as well, with Danielle Adams and Jane Appel. And then plus your rookie and Kayla McBride. Crystal, what do you think about the Stars, though, for the first part, though, knowing again that they have to play the series, and this will be the last time that they see number 25 wearing that jersey, and perhaps retiring that number opening night 2015 next year at AT&T Center?
I think because Becky Hammon is her last season, I think they're going to try to do it for Becky, do it for number 25. Are they going to be successful? Maybe, possibly. I mean, like we said, the Lynx team, even though they have Brunson back, she's not really playing like the old Brunson. She's got a little bit of more weight on her, a bit of a noticeable weight. So who knows? Maybe they will, though, pull it off for Becky Hammon. And like you said, their future is bright. Kayla McBride, she's a really good rookie. I don't know if she'll be in the running for Rookie of the Year. I think Shanae Ogumike has that locked down, but she's definitely going to be a name in the force for the WNBA in the years to come. So I think San Antonio is going to be okay. I think they're going to be in good hands. I expect them, to be a lot younger now. Hopefully, well, for our sake, I hope that the Sparks will still be better than them, but hopefully they'll be better than they were this year.
Yes, I think again the task at hand here again is playing for Becky Hammon for one deal as well, and two, there's just a lot going on as well with their future as well. As we do bring on Chris Mancy here, guys, we're going to go from the postseason now to those 4 teams that were on the outside looking in that did not get their invitations to the postseason party, which is the 4 remaining teams that did not qualify this year for the 2014 postseason. And as we'll talk about next Thursday, is the 2015 WNBA Draft Lottery being held next Thursday. I believe I read somewhere, I believe it's either this Thursday or next Thursday, they'll be having the Draft Lottery. Crystal, we'll go to the teams out west first, and we begin with the Seattle Storm, who for the first time in a long time are not in the postseason party. They had a lot of adversity and / problems again involving just a very bad season again without Lauren Jackson for the 2nd straight year, with her injuries again, and Sue Bird with her age. They brought in Crystal Langhorn and Jenna O'Hay during the offseason. But, Crystal, I mean, the Storm have been a team that have relied a little too heavy on veteran players like LJ and Sue for a long time. In your view, I think, or at least in my view real quick before we get to you and Chris real quick, is I think that perhaps they were a bit, still, too long, I think too old in the age department, I think, with Sue, and again, missing LJ again for the 2nd straight year. That was like, you took those 2 players out, and you had a bunch of, what looked like chickens running around with their heads cut off in Seattle. But Crystal, I mean, your thoughts about the Seattle season, which again is for the first time, and I want to say 10 years that they're not in the postseason party. What do you think Brian Agler has to do to get this team back up to par here and back in the postseason mix next year?
I think they've got to get younger. Definitely what they could do. They could just hopefully that they could get a good piece of the draft. There's not so much you can do right now. It's kind of depressing seeing Seattle not in the playoffs anymore. It was kind of a depressing year for them. Because Sue was battling an injury last year. I know she had that fist removed from her knee. She came back this year, and Lauren Jackson not being there. That's how they took a lot out of that team. And they just have to get younger. They just have to become a team. Hopefully, just find the right piece.
Chris, to you real quick, man. I know that you just got in here, and we really did not need you for the playoff part. But Chris, I mean, you look at the Seattle Storm again, man. No Lauren Jackson and Sue Bird was hit and miss all year. Just a team, I think, man, that was really destined to go nowhere, basically. And again, seeing their long run of the postseason end this year, what do you think has to happen for the Storm to get back up to par next season?
I think maybe a new coach, get some new players with Sue Bird since she can't do everything, and just like with the Sparks, one player can't do everything, and yeah.
Yeah, I think without Lauren Jackson, that their big puzzle piece when that she's gone and she's injured and stuff. I think it's been like a big role, I think, affecting Seattle. Then the other team that did not make the postseason party again for like the 10th straight year since they made the move from Motown is the Tulsa Shock, who this year were without Liz Cambage, who was partaking down in Australia for the FIBA tournament this year, happening later next month. Crystal, to you again, using the old-fashioned ladies first rule here in our hangouts here again with the female correspondents in here on the network. Again, Crystal. Okay, Odyssey Sims, number 2 overall, had a great season as well. Skylar Diggins, no sophomore slump, I think might win Most Improved Player this year. Their future is bright, but there's something I think that is going wrong here, I think, where there was a stat I read, I believe, from one of our writers on WNBA.com or somewhere on Twitter that read that the Shock have basically increased their win total by 1 every season, I think, since they made the move to Tulsa. I think that's inaccurate, though. But Fred Williams, again, coming from Atlanta last year, he led that team all the way to the postseason. Then he gets fired for not winning the title in Atlanta. Then he goes to Tulsa. I mean, I think the pieces are in place with Sims and Diggins for a few years. But I think that team is way, way too young, I think, right now to make any sort of run right now in the postseason anytime soon. What do you think has to happen, though, for the Shock to get back to those old Detroit days of, you know, the great years from 98 till 2009?
I don't know if they'll ever get back to the Detroit days, but I do expect them to get way better. I don't think they're going to be bad forever. I think they do need a post player. Don't know who. Don't know where you can get her from. I think they need someone. They have the right pieces. I think, but I will say that they probably need to get rid of some of those bench players and bring in some more. I have some names in mind, but I'm not gonna, put nobody on there. But I have a lot in my mind. But I think they should get rid of some of those bench players and bring in some more. And I think that will help a little bit. But for the most part, they're okay.
Yeah, I agree totally. Chris, we'll get to your off-air stuff after our next show ends, so you can tell security that we'll be finishing up all that other stuff after our next show ends here pretty soon. But Chris, with the Shock, okay, it's been pretty rough since they made that move from Detroit all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the middle of nowhere, basically. I'm not dissing the city of Tulsa at all, folks. I know there's a soccer team. There's a soccer team that plays against the team that I play for there, so no way am I doing that. But Chris, it just seems like, though, that since the Shock have left Detroit, there's sort of been like a curse over this franchise. They have, there was a year that they won 3 games all season, and I think that again with Odyssey Sims in place and Skylar Diggins and Courtney Paris, the other CP3 in the league who just won her first rebounding title, that there are places, there are pieces in place, Chris. But again, the future is very blurred right now for the postseason because they're just too young. What do you think has to happen for the Shock to get back, in some fashion, back to those old days of the old mighty Detroit Shock?
I don't know. Just no comment on those. Total Shock.
Because Chris's nuclear player got busted open by that franchise back on August 25th, 2013 at Staples Center in a double overtime thriller. Crystal, going to the Eastern Conference, we'll go to a obvious team, of course, since they're the longtime East Coast rivals of the Sparks and have a player and coach I can't stand still. That would be the almighty New York Liberty, who again just don't. Again, it's another bad season again for the Liberty again, who in the early years were a team that you did not want to play other than the Houston Comets in the WNBA Finals because they got there like the first 3 years in a row and just didn't get the job done when it counted the most. But I think we talked about, Tulsa and the Storm being, or like Tulsa being very young. Chris, I think New York probably wins the battle for either Social Security or Medicare slash AARP benefits, because that team, they have the oldest roster in the entire WNBA between Cap and when they did have DMJ, who's now with Atlanta. Then he had Swin Cash come in as well during midseason. I don't know what the deal is, and I believe Bad Luck Bill needs to do a lot to get this down that age, where they're down to maybe college age slash legal drinking age, not old man Steve Nash status here. What do you think has to happen for the Liberty to get back where they belong, which is up in the top 4 of the Eastern Conference playoff picture sometime soon? Because, I mean, that Cap and Swin are getting up in their age. What has to happen like that to get New York back in the postseason mix?
The fact that you said that they are ARPA, that was a good one. That was funny.
Sure seems like it.
Honestly, you just have to start drafting younger players and keeping them, not drafting them and cutting them. He's picky about that. He's picky about drafting these players because he cuts them because he has a bias of certain players at certain positions under certain heights. So it's kind of like it's kind of like putting it on himself. That's all you can really say. He's putting it on himself, and he's and the pressure's on now. This is like his second season in New York. The first one we excused him from because it was his first year, but you have all-stars. You got Tina Charles and Kathy Pondix on your team. There's no way that you should be in the playoffs at all. I think that has to be going through his mind.
I think that New York basically kind of, corkscrewed themselves over when they traded for Charles and had to give up their 4th overall pick in the draft this year, which went to Connecticut. We've got Elisa Thomas in that with that 4th overall selection in this year's draft. Personally, again, with all the cliches, about their age and everything else, including they can basically qualify for AARP or Medicare right now and other benefits perhaps with their age of that roster right now. But I think between Cap and Swin and Pearson, this is a team I think that is not built right now to go far because the aged bodies are more prone to injury. I mean, you can look at Kathy Pondexter real quick, Crystal, and her Achilles flared up against the Sparks back in July, and she was basically hit and miss after that. And personally, in my view, it's in New York. It's basically why bother having draft picks if all you're going to do is draft them and then cut them, as you did with Megan Simmons, who, by the way, folks, a little birdie who works in the front office that I know very well, is a close friend of mine, told me that the Sparks could not sign Megan Simmons, who was drafted by New York, cut because she had gone to play overseas somewhere during when she was waived by the Liberty. But, Crystal, it's kind of like, why bother giving New York draft picks when all they're going to do is draft them and then cut them 10 days later, basically?
That's a good under way. He wouldn't have it any other way. He's done that in Detroit, and he's doing it now. He's trying to bring the same format to Detroit, but you can't do that. Different team, different era of the WNBA. Now women are more athletic. They're playmakers now. It's better, and I think he just has an infatuation with old players or something. Maybe he's trying to build a WNBA old folks home or something. Maybe he's trying to just find all the oldest players he can get and put them on a team. Maybe he's trying to make a record. I don't know. That's just his thing, I guess.
I'll one up you real quick here about how I said that I one up to you when I high stepped all the way into the ocean water in Hawaii after KTV buzzer. I think Lambert's trying to build like a New York City retirement home for WNBA players. It sure seems like. I mean, when you had DMJ earlier in the year on his roster, 15 years in the league is probably the longest tenured player in the entire league, and it remains to be Bad Luck Bill. And Chris, to you, man, I mean, the Liberty have been, they're kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. They're so hard to figure out because it's kind of like, it's like, what are you doing? You're not making any progress, so why keep playing the season with all these players that are, aged / seasoned / old / retiring veterans on your roster, basically.
Yep.
I think the first goal here for the Liberty is just to get younger. I mean, that's all they have to do. Like this next team, who I think might be the youngest roster in the entire WNBA, perhaps, which would be the Connecticut Sun folks, who, sort of had a lot of draft day hype. Number 1 overall pick, Shanae Agumake. Number 4 overall pick, Alisa Thomas. 2 first-round picks. Not to make that 3 first-round picks. Also got the 11th pick from the LA Sparks for this past offseason. And Crystal, I mean, I think that the Sun, I believe, have the brighter future of all the 4 teams in the draft lottery this year. Now, the only reason why I say that they're a bit brighter is because that roster is really, really young, where all 5 starters were in their first or second year, minus 13-year veteran Katie Douglas, who was in that roster as well for Connecticut. I think the only problem, though, might be Ann Donovan's time, I think, might be running out, because I think she's been there a long time, and she's had a few really bad years in Connecticut. I think the roster's fine, but I think their head coach might be one thing to fix perhaps sometime soon. But what do you think about the Sun and their future with Shanae and Alisa Thomas going into the future?
I think their future is bright. I would be surprised if Ann Donovan was going to get fired so quickly. It's only been a year. I would actually, if they did, I think that would kind of make things worse right now because that's such a young team. So they've been with Ann Donovan for her 2+ years that she's. I think it's only 2 years now that for the little time that she's been there. And like you said, you have starters who have been in the league for a year on her team. So I think they don't know anything else right now. So if you were to do it, you can't do it the way that the LA Sparks did. You have to do it at the end of the season because I think that way you give a young team a better time to learn a new system.
You know, and Crystal, this just like popped in my head real quick. You know, if I was going to go make some popcorns, it literally just popped in my head right now that could perhaps if Donovan is fired, perhaps do you believe they would slide Grandma Gillum to be the next head coach of the Sun? Perhaps. What do you think?
I hope not. Anything Jennifer Gillum touches is bad luck.
Which included the Sparks a few seasons ago, right?
I hope not. I think they should hire me. I think we're around the same age. I think we do pretty good. We probably wouldn't win nothing though, but it's just that'd be the first person I signed. I'm for Monique Curry. I'm the championship team. Like we going all the way.
All right, so we'll start recruiting. We'll start the campaign. Crystal Thomas to become the next head coach of the Connecticut Sun. Chris, real quick here about the Sun again. Very young team. All 5 starters, or 4 of the 5 starters, were all in their first or second year, minus Katie Douglas, who's in her 13th year. I think the future's bright. Just, I think perhaps the head coach might be a bit outdated because Ann Donovan's been there a few years and has had a few bumps in the road during her tenure there in Connecticut. What do you think has to happen for the Sun to get back in the postseason sometime soon with their pretty much retooled, very young roster?
I think they just need to regroup to next season with that rookies and everything, and they'll be fine by next season, which can't even take this with the security. Knock me out of this hangout.
No surprise. It doesn't surprise me at all one bit. Crystal, we'll pose a question to you real quick. Out of those 4 teams we just talked about that are in the lottery, which team will have the #1 pick in the draft? You can look at the records if you wanted to, but who do you think gets the #1 pick in the draft this year and why?
Tulsa might get it again. I don't know. Like I just feel like it's gonna go that way. It happened before. I don't know. I think I may be wrong, but someone's telling me Tulsa's gonna get it, the #1 pick.
It might be Tulsa. I agree. In case anyone's wondering out there real quick, the records of all 4 lottery-bound teams real quick. 4 teams, New York 15-19, Connecticut 13-21, and Seattle and Tulsa both 12-22. Chris, who in your view gets the first overall pick in the 2015 WNBA draft? Who gets it and why?
Well, I can't hear. My security over here is too loud.
You've got either New York, you've got Connecticut, Seattle, or Tulsa. In Chris and Mancy's perfect world where the Sparks somehow win the title this year, in your view, who gets the #1 overall pick and why in the 2015 WNBA draft?
I still can't hear. This security. I can't win.
Oh my God.
And you know what we'll do? We'll do it easier here and just see if we can put him on mute right now until he gets that figured out real quick. I'm looking at the records real quick here. Now, in the event we see that I see here on my screen that Tulsa and Seattle are tied with a 12-22 record. Between them, I personally I think we can all agree here. I'm going to say Tulsa gets it as well because they're a team that needs something positive here. They've had, many bad years in Tulsa, or at least a few since they made that move from Detroit, but Crystal, I kind of figure it'll be either Tulsa or maybe Seattle gets the #1 pick, perhaps, because they have the identical records of 12-22. Then I look at it this way, that you could perhaps have Seattle or Tulsa 1, then Seattle or Tulsa 2, and then Connecticut 3, then New York 4, perhaps, with the first 4 picks, and anyone else follow suit after that. But I personally think it's going to be Tulsa #1, then Seattle 2, and then Connecticut, then New York, running out the top 4 for those picks. But that's what's going to occur, though. And again, the draft lottery will be sometime very, very soon coming up here at this point in time. Folks, real quick, we want to remind you again that Sunday will be the only Sparks home game for the 2014 WNBA Western Conference semifinals. The Sparks take on the longtime rival Phoenix Mercury. Game time is set for 6 p.m. at Staples Center. Tickets start at $12 and are on sale now by calling 844-GO-SPARKS, 844-GOSPARKS, or buy your seats online at lasparks.com. It's Sparks playoff basketball. You got to believe in Sparks postseason magic. Crystal, before we get out of here for the night, we're going to end it right here because we have a few things to do off air here with Chris. Your final thoughts about the Sparks regular season and your expectations for the postseason are what?
Final thoughts about the Spark season. They gave a lot of us fans heart attacks. I know I probably suffered from at least 10 of them. And postseason expectations, I would hope we at least get to the second round. Don't think it's going to happen. If we got swept. So I hope we at least make it competitive.
Yeah, I totally agree. Chris, before we get out of here for the night, give us your quick recap of the Sparks 2014 regular season and your expectations for the 2014 postseason.
This security.
Chris, we need it sometime like right now because we're gonna get out of here for the night, dude.
Just an up and round roller coaster season. We're gonna take this to the playoffs, and we're going all the way.
And with that, we'll just put him on mute for just being the homer picks here real quick, because that was completely unneeded. And folks, by the way, in case you're wondering, again, we will quickly here, folks, let you know again about our off-season programming schedule, folks. Now, again, I'm sure you saw that I was going all goo-goo gaga and going crazy about open court last night. Again, folks, if anyone out there, again, is a fan of the WNBA, of any team, we want you to join our live hangouts here during the off-season to talk about the WNBA on Open Court. The Sparks Network is opening the court to all WNBA fans to come on and join in the fun here on a show very similar, folks. Now, I want you folks to do here, if you guys want to find out more about the show, all you got to do is watch Around the Horn tomorrow at 2 o'clock pack time, or whatever your time zone is, folks, because our show, Open Court, will be just like Around the Horn. We'll have scoring, and just like we did with Chris, we will have plenty of mutilation from this guy right here who will be in charge of the show. Points and mutes, and, of course, WNBA basketball, folks, in Open Court. And we will relive all of the glory days of the Sparks on Ageless Sparks. We will not be calling it Timeless Sparks here. But we did figure, folks, that if Sportsnet will give it to us, we'll give it to you guys. We'll talk about all the great Sparks memories of the past on Ageless Sparks. Then we'll have our international show of Sparkling Overseas. And we will also, announce today, we will also be covering the 2014 FIBA World Championships for the women on FIBA 365. So, folks, on that note, we will wrap up for tonight. We'll see you folks again here tomorrow night with another edition of WNBA 365 covering the postseason. For all of us here in the Hangout, for Chris and Mancy in Anaheim, California, and our awesome correspondent and our newly famous correspondent, Chris Thomas, down from the City of Angels in in Los Angeles, California. Calvin McClure from Studio 171 in San Diego saying good night. We'll see you folks tomorrow night. But until then, have a safe night. Travel safely on becoming. And good night now. This has been the LA Sparks 365 Network. See you folks tomorrow night. Bye-bye.